Hey, it's Jonathan McGinley, the owner and founder of Intentional Man, an organization that inspires and equips men to live intentionally, pursue God-sized goals, and build lives of significance. I want you to take a minute and actually imagine a life where you have time to spend on the things that are most important to you. Imagine having enough time to spend with your loved ones, enough time to do the things that you enjoy, enough time to actually pursue those dreams. Picture what it would feel like to live consistently in alignment with your mission, your vision, and your values. How much different would you feel? Instead of being overwhelmed and feeling like you're constantly behind, you feel like you actually have control over your schedule and you're consistently moving your life forward. The problem is, as a man, I know you have so many different roles and responsibilities in your life that you can just feel like you're drowning. It's so easy to let other things get in the way of what's most important. It's so easy to let your life slip by without really spending time on what matters the most. It seems like almost any time that I ask another guy how their life's been going lately, the answer is always something like, man, so busy. I'm just so slammed right now, or I just have way too much going on. And with most of the guys that I work with, there's been this consistent theme of feeling overwhelmed, like their schedules are out of control or their life is out of balance. For some, it might also be that they just don't really know what they should spend their time on, or they're not really feeling that motivated or passionate about anything. And so much of their time is spent wasted on distractions and on things that don't truly matter. Can you relate to that? Have you had a time where you felt overwhelmed by too much going on? Or have you felt like you're just wasting too much of your time? There was a time not long ago when I felt completely overwhelmed in my life. I was the men's ministry director at a large church in my area. I was also leading a men's ministry at a church plant that I helped start. I was building some websites on the side, drumming for multiple different events, shipping out these time-lapse equipment units for my friend's business. And then on top of all of that, I was working to grow a business. And time after time, I was just getting to the end of the week and not making significant progress on some of the things that were truly the most important to me. And it was extremely frustrating, just feeling like I was working really hard, but just not moving the needle in my most important things. I'm sure you can relate. And one of the worst feelings is feeling like you're doing your best or working extremely hard, but just not moving forward. Or maybe you've just been kind of coasting through life and you haven't made time for the things that you say are the most important. Or you just are feeling stuck because you don't know how to spend your time or you just seem to be wasting too much of it. Either way, it's frustrating and it's something that I wanted to figure out. So I went on a pretty intense journey during that season to figure out a better way to organize and execute each week around the things that were the most important to me and the things that were truly going to move my life forward. And so I found a couple key tools and exercises that drastically helped me just feel more in control of my schedule and execute well on all the different roles and responsibilities in my life. So I wanted to share those tools with you in this short video series. So are you ready to jump in? Let's go ahead and get started here. So I want to start by asking you two questions. So the first one, what is one thing you could do, and it's something you aren't doing now, that if you did it on a regular basis, it would have a tremendous positive difference in your personal life? So what's that one thing that could make a tremendous positive difference? Question number two is similar. What's one thing in your business or professional life that would bring similar results? So this could be in your current job, or it could be in that business that you want to launch or that mission that you want to pursue. If you need to pause the video for a minute to kind of come up with your answers to these questions, feel free to go ahead and do so now. But once you have your answers, hold on to them and we're going to revisit them shortly. If you've spent some time in the personal development or the business development world, there's a good chance you've seen something called the Eisenhower Matrix. And even if this is something you haven't seen before, it's always something that's worth revisiting. So there's typically 4 ways in which you spend your time. And so those 4 ways are represented in the quadrants here in the matrix. And there's 2 factors that define the activity. There's urgent and then there's important. So urgent means it requires immediate attention. Urgent things usually act on you. They're things like your phone ringing or a Slack message coming in or someone walking into your office and asking you to do something. They're usually kind of right there in front of you, and so you act on them immediately. But just because they are urgent, it doesn't mean they're necessarily always important. So importance, though, has to do with results. So these are activities that really contribute to your mission, to your values, to your goals. These are the things that truly move the needle in your life, the activities that really have the biggest impact. So where you typically kind of react to the urgent matters, you usually have to act on the important things. You have to be proactive. So let's take a look at each of these boxes on the matrix, and I'm going to give you some examples for each box and explain the effects of spending too much time in each box. So let's go ahead and get started with quadrant one. Quadrant one represents activities that are both urgent and important. So these would be things like big work deadlines, major problems that you have to deal with right away, a major relational issue, or a serious health complication. They're just things that are right there in your face. Everyone will have some of these activities in their life at different times. Some of them truly are unavoidable. But here's one of the major problems of spending too much time in quadrant one. If you only focus your time and energy on things that are urgent and important, they eventually are just going to completely control you. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel burnt out. And when you do finally catch a break, you usually retreat to quadrant four, which is the non-important, non-urgent activities, because you're just trying to get some relief. And I've been here many times in my life. It's not a fun place to be living in quadrant one for a long period of time. So let's take a look at some of the results of spending too much time in quadrant one. So these activities usually come with a fairly large amount of stress. You're also going to feel burned out. You're going to be in constant crisis management mode just all the time. It's going to feel like all you do in your job is you put out fires. And with all of that, you're going to constantly feel like you're behind. Quadrant one is a place where you'll have to go at times, but it's definitely not a place where you want to be for very long. So now let's take a look at quadrant three. And this is where you're spending your time on urgent things, but not important tasks. And I would say out of all the boxes on this list, this is where I see too many guys spending too much time. It's where you're going to find yourself often if you're not being proactive and intentional with your time. So these activities, they usually feel pretty important because they're urgent, but ultimately these activities don't really move the needle in your life or line up with what you say is important to you. A lot of times these tasks are based on other people's priorities and not your own, or they come from other people's expectations of you. So let's take a look at some examples of quadrant three activities. So these would be things like phone calls or emails. Could be some meetings, could be text messages or Slack messages. They're usually other people's priorities and not your own. Someone asks you to do something and you feel like you need to do it. So you do it immediately, even though it shouldn't necessarily be a high priority. So let's take a look at some of the results that you get if you spend too much time in quadrant three. Again, you're going to feel like you're in crisis management mode all the time because everything feels urgent. You're going to have more of a short-term focus. You're going to be more concerned about getting the small things done now instead of the activities that will really benefit you in the long run. Your life's going to feel out of control. You will be overly busy, but not necessarily productive. You'll have more shallow relationships because you're only investing time and energy into those relationships if something feels urgent. So you're going to have a lack of balance in your life as well because usually work feels like the most urgent thing. And so you're going to miss out on some other important areas in your life. If you're not proactive, if you're not intentional, if you don't plan, you're going to fall into quadrant three more than any other box. And for all the people I talk to who say they're too busy for anything that they enjoy, a lot of times they're spending way too much time in this quadrant. So they feel extremely busy, but they're not really actually moving the needle in their lives. So it's important that you learn to recognize when you're spending too much time in quadrant three, so you can adjust and spend more time on the truly important things. Okay, then there's quadrant four. And this is where you're spending time on the things that aren't urgent and aren't important. So some examples of quadrant four would be things like social media, the news, TV, all the different time wasters. You know what they are for you. Mine's usually reading way too many sports articles or news, or it could just be filling your time with meaningless busy work. If you're spending a lot of time here, you're pretty much wasting your time on things that aren't helping you in life at all. So take a look at the results of spending too much time in quadrant four. You're going to be ineffective. You won't be continuously hitting your goals. You won't be getting good results in your life. Spending too much time on non-urgent and non-important tasks usually leads to a pretty passive lifestyle. So you might be experiencing a lack of purpose or a lack of passion in your life. It also causes you to become overly dependent on other people. Too much time in quadrant four, and your life's going to slip by without ever spending time on the things that truly matter. Okay, now let's take a look at quadrant two. This is where you're spending time on the things that are important, but they're not necessarily urgent. So these would be things like investing in your relationships, taking time to plan and get clear on your long-term vision, goal setting and dreaming about the future, taking time to put systems and processes in place, investing in your health, doing the things that actually fill your cup. These are all the things that you know you need to do, but often never actually do because they're not urgent. And these are typically the things that truly do actually move the needle in your life. These are the things that will give you the biggest results. These are the activities that foster great relationships and help you live in alignment with your mission and your values. Here's the great thing about spending time on quadrant 2 activities as well. They usually help minimize those quadrant 1 activities. If you actually spend time planning, setting goals, investing in your main relationships, and creating systems and processes for your life, those things usually prevent the fires from happening. So if you take time to get clarity on your personal mission statement, your goals, and your vision for your life, you usually minimize health issues, financial issues, and relational issues. So let's take a look back at the questions that you answered when we first started this training. I asked you, what one thing could you do that would have the greatest impact on your life? And then also, what one thing could you do that would have the greatest impact on your career? Take a look at your answers. What quadrant do they fall into? Most likely, it falls in quadrant 2. It's almost always an important but non-urgent task. You know it's the most important thing that you could be doing, but you're not doing it consistently because it's not urgent. The question asked, what would make the most tremendous difference in your life? If you would start to focus more on these quadrant 2 activities, it can have a profound impact on the different areas of your life. So let's look at some of the results from spending time in quadrant 2. You're going to live with so much more clarity. You're going to have a vision for your life. You're going to live with more purpose and passion. You're going to be more disciplined and focused. You're going to feel more in control of your life. There's going to be fewer fires to put out, and you're going to actually get the results that you've wanted, and you're going to live in alignment with your values. This might not be brand new information for you, but I want to ask you, are you truly getting the things on this list consistently? Are these the results that you're getting in your life right now? You may already know that you should be spending more time on the non-urgent, important things in life, but are you actually doing it? Taking action and getting results is much different than just having the knowledge. If you're not consistently making time for your biggest priorities, you may be spending too much time in the other quadrants, and you just need to get back to a quick refocus to get back on track. So I want to walk you through a quick exercise that's going to bring you greater clarity and help you get back to spending more time in quadrant 2. You're going to find a downloadable worksheet attached to this training. So go ahead and download that worksheet. It's a fillable PDF, so you can fill it out on your computer, or feel free to print it, fill it out by hand if you'd prefer that. So if you need a minute to pause the video, feel free to do so. But the only place to get time for quadrant 2 activities is from quadrants 3 and 4. You can't ignore the quadrant 1 activities because they're urgent and important, but you must really fight to do more of the quadrant 2 activities because they're going to help you minimize the time spent in quadrant 1. In order to say yes to quadrant 2 activities, you're going to have to say no to some things. You're going to have to decide on what your true priorities are. You're going to have to be able to say no to some things that don't necessarily fall in line with those priorities. You got to remember, every time that you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. You might think that one meeting isn't really a big deal, but ultimately you're saying no to time that could be spent on quadrant 2 things. So you have to decide if it's worth the trade. To make sure you plan all your priorities and not just tasks, you're going to start this exercise off by identifying your various roles in life. Identifying your key roles. So the first section of your worksheet gives you space to write down all the different roles that you have in life. To help you think, just think of this upcoming week, all the various roles that you're going to have in the next 7 days or so. Think in terms of relationships, your role at work or in the community. Here's some examples of the various roles that you might be playing. So feel free to combine some of those roles or to just list them all out individually. But I want you to go ahead and pause the video with this example slide and write down your roles on your sheet right now. And when you're finished, you can come back and resume the video. When you have all your roles written down, I now want you to take those roles and actually list them in order of priority. So you're going to start with what's most important to you on your list, and then you're going to move down the list from there. So feel free to add some other things in this step if you didn't list them all in the last exercise. But it's really important to understand what actually matters the most to you. It's too easy to spend time on the things that aren't actually the most important parts of your life. So this step is really vital to the process. So the goal here is for you to clearly see what is the most important thing in your life. Because you might say that God is the most important thing in your life, but your time and your attention doesn't really show that. You might say that your family is more important than work, but is that truly a reality in your life? So I want you to take some time now to write down your roles in order of priority on the worksheet, and then you can resume the video when you're finished. Okay, the last step of this training is to identify the quadrant 2 activities for your top priorities. If you wrote down that God's your most important priority, then what are the actual activities that you would need to do on a weekly basis to show that He's your most important priority? So you would maybe write down things like a daily God time, going to church, attending a small group, just something along those lines. If family is one of the most important things to you, you might write down, a date night with my wife, or intentional time with my kids, eating dinner together as a family. So here's a list of some examples that you can use for your reference. So start at the top of your priority list and then identify at least one quadrant 2 activity for each item that you need to make time for. Some of these things might already, they might be things that you're already doing consistently, and that's okay. List it anyway. For other categories, you might realize you're not intentionally doing anything that's moving the needle forward, and you need to identify some new habits or activities to get started. So take as much time as you need to get really good clarity here for your top priorities. You can pause the video now and fill out the last section on your sheet. So now that you have your list, you might be looking at it. You might be feeling a little overwhelmed at all the activities you wrote down. You don't need to leave this training and go do all of them at once. In fact, I wouldn't recommend doing that. It's best to start small, because if you try to add too many things at once, you're most likely going to burn out and not really do any of them. So here's my challenge to you today. I want you to take 1 or 2 items from that list and put them in your calendar right now. Actually put them in your schedule. Pick 1 to 2 things that you know are going to make a big positive impact on your life and commit to doing them in the next week. What gets scheduled usually actually gets done, but what's left to chance usually doesn't get done. So pick an item or 2, put it in your schedule right now. I know that you can do that. That one thing could truly be the beginning of a new life for you. Like, imagine if you did that item consistently over the next few weeks. It could have a profound impact on your life. So this is a great first step to taking back control of your time and making sure you're spending it on the things that truly matter to you. So this is a great first step to living with more intentionality in your life and being more proactive with how you spend your time. Just this one step, done consistently over time, can have a tremendous impact on your life and the lives of those around you. So make sure you fill out that entire worksheet if you haven't yet, and then get those 1 or 2 items on the schedule right away. So I want to thank you for joining me today. I truly hope this training was encouraging. I hope it was helpful. Please share this video with anyone else that you might think would benefit from it. And then in the next video of this series, I'm going to give you my all-time favorite tool for getting these things on your calendar and in your life on a consistent basis. Definitely one you won't want to miss. So keep an eye out on your inbox for the next video. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me today, and go live a life you're proud of by living intentionally.